Hello and welcome. Today we are reviewing the Guerlain L'Essentiel Natural Glow Foundation. This claims to be a 16-hour wearing natural glow foundation. In my experience, glowy and long wear don't always go together. So today we're finding out if Guerlain actually lives up to the claims it's making with this just beautiful foundation. We're doing a full review, so we're going to cover application, finish, coverage, and longevity with a complete 11-hour wear test. And if you haven't already noticed, I am a very fair, pale, Casper-like, if you will, individual. So we're also going to find out if the lightest shade in this foundation does work for very fair, neutral undertoned individuals like myself. If you're interested in skipping ahead to any particular section of this review, be sure to check out the description box below because there are timestamps so that you can skip ahead to whatever you're most interested in. The retail price of this foundation is $60 for 1 fluid ounce. It is a liquid formula that claims to have a medium coverage, natural finish, and be best for dry, combo, or normal skin. Some of the key claims that Guerlain makes about this foundation are that the bare complexion is more even, the appearance of pores is reduced by 49%, the appearance of imperfections is reduced by 39%, and that made up skin, so I guess having a full face of makeup, appears smoother, looks refined, and the complexion is more radiant. We are going to investigate all of those claims. I've heard amazing things and we're gonna find out if they're true. I picked up the Palest Shade 00N, which is the neutral tone of the Palest Shade 00. They do have 3 00 shades, one for warm skin, one for cool skin, and one for neutral skin, or skin that has those undertones. I really appreciate that because a lot of times foundation ranges will only have like the lightest shade in a cool tone or in a cool and a warm. It's not often that you get them in all 3 of those undertones. I really need a balanced foundation. If a foundation has a cool undertone, it tends to look kind of salmon-y on me. And if it has a yellow undertone or a warm undertone, it tends to make me look a little bit jaundiced or like I have salmonella. Neither of those things is really what we're going for. So I really need a balanced foundation, something that has a neutral tone to it. So grateful that they decided to have the palest shade in all 3 of those undertones. I'm going to swatch this foundation next to a few of my other foundations where I own the palest shade and show you what it looks like just in a swatch on its own right out of the bottle next to those shades.
So here are the swatches right here in the middle. This is the Guerlain in 00N. I put my best shade matches right next to it. So right here, this is my very best shade match. It is the Shiseido Synchro Skin Radiant Lifting Foundation in shade 110 Alabaster. The next best match for me is probably this. This is the Dior Face and Body in shade 0N. And right next to that, we have the NARS Natural Radiant Longwear Foundation in Mont Blanc. Over here, this is the Estee Lauder Futurist Hydra Rescue in shade 1N0. And on the end here is the Armani Luminous Silk in 1.5. This shade over here is the Guerlain in 03N. I thought that I had picked up 02N for when I'm self-tanned, but somehow I actually ended up with 03N. I will definitely need to exchange that for 02N because this is going to be too dark for me, even with a self-tan. I don't tend to self-tan that dark. I do want to mention that from here over, each of these shades is the palest or the fairest neutral shade in their respective foundation formulas. Like Mont Blanc, for example, I think there is a shade lighter in that NARS line. I know there is, but it's not a neutral undertone. And for me, I will only buy foundations if they say neutral undertone just because I am so neutral that I really need that, and everything looks so weird if it's not a neutral tone for me. So it's kind of funny to see from here over just the complete range of what the lightest foundation looks like. And all of these do match me. We're going to find out about the Guerlain, but all the rest of the ones do match me at my palest. Some of them match me better than others, but none of them are off. They all match well.
Before we go into applying this foundation, I want to mention that my skin is dry to dry combination. I say that because around the perimeter of my face and especially my under eyes, my skin is quite dry and tends to dehydrate easily. And then right through here, like my nose and especially around my mouth, I tend to have a lot of congestion, which for me manifests as enlarged pores and an uneven skin texture. Thank you, aging process, for that gift. We've got a nice pump bottle, which I really appreciate. The packaging of this foundation is so beautiful, and I love that it has a pump function. I am not a fan of foundations that do not have the pump function. I also love that this bottle is so unique. It's not a rectangle, it's not just your common cylinder like, you know, the Armani Luminous Silk, you have this cylinder, or Shiseido, we have just the classic rectangle. I love that we have something unique here and beautiful, because I feel like if you are spending $60 on a foundation, you should get an experience. There should be beautiful packaging and something that looks nice on your vanity, looks nice laying out on your bathroom counter. That should be part of that price tag. You should be getting your money's worth. So I love the packaging, and I love the function that they do have the pump included, because there is no reason that a foundation at this price point should not have a pump. And I'm talking to you, Dior Face and Body, which does not have a pump. And that is like, seriously? I understand that it's like a runway foundation, but still, it's just, I mean, give me a pump, please. On one half of my face, I'm going to use a brush. I will dot the foundation on with my fingers and then use a stippling motion to pat it in. And on the other half of my face, I am going to use a sponge. I have found that I like the brush better. And the brush that I'm using today is from It Cosmetics. It's just a round topped foundation brush. This is one of my favorite foundation brushes of all time. So you can see immediately that when it's sitting on the face at first, it looks like it's going to be too deep. But as we stipple it in, the match is actually very, very good. I feel like if it was any lighter, I mean, you could maybe make it, I would say, a quarter of a shade lighter, but any more than that, like even I think a full half shade lighter than this, and it would definitely make me look a little bit ghostly, a little bit Caspery. So I think this is a really good shade. When I first saw it, I was very nervous, but once it went on and I saw it, I was like, okay, this is actually a really great shade match. Very balanced, very neutral. I did initially try to buff this in. I tried that a couple times, and I have found that, you know, buffing like this, that's my normal preferred way of putting on a foundation. But with this, I found that the stippling motion gives you the best finish with this. It looks very skin-like, almost airbrushed. It's very lovely. So I really liked the foundation a lot more once I started stippling it versus my normal buffing motion. So I zoomed you in a little bit just to see, now that we have half of the face done, it's a very good shade match. It does smooth. I do feel like it does decrease the appearance of pores, especially on my nose. Like right here, I haven't done the tip of my nose yet, so let me just go in and kind of stipple a little bit more. I can definitely see that where I have the foundation on my nose, this side of my nose looks demonstrably smoother than this side. It actually does a really good job on the areas of my face that are a little more textured, like right around my nose. I often have problems, and I know a lot of people who have drier skin or struggle with congestion or any kind of texture have problems in those texture areas where foundation just doesn't stick or it looks uneven, it patches out. This does not do that. It actually works really well and lays very nicely in those areas. We're gonna stay zoomed in to do the other side. I'm going to use a sponge. This is from Real Techniques. This is like my favorite sponge. I am not the biggest fan of this foundation with a sponge. That tends to be the case nowadays. I have found lately, and by lately I mean probably over the past year, that a lot of foundations that I really love with a brush look much more matte when I apply them with a sponge. And as someone who really likes the nice glowy effect, I like that illuminating aspect of foundations, that's the finish I'm generally gravitating towards, I don't want to lose that illumination. I don't want to lose that radiance that I sometimes lose with a sponge. And I don't notice it immediately always, but I tend to notice it once the foundation has had a few moments to settle. I also find that with a sponge, it's a little more difficult to get a good coverage on my nose where I have that texture issue going on. So I just find that sometimes it pulls it up and it moves it around a little bit more than stippling or buffing with a brush does. So I do tend to prefer to use brushes for most of my foundations. There are some that do work better with a sponge, but I just want to show you the difference in case you are someone that's very set on using a sponge. I would also mention that when using a sponge with this foundation, it's very important to make sure you're bouncing the sponge. When I try to do a rolling motion, I find that it moves it around a little bit more, just because again, this is a natural glow foundation. This is a radiant foundation. So if you don't lay it down properly, if you don't really set it down in a way that works with the formula, you can have some slipping and some sliding that you're not going to want. So I would definitely recommend bouncing versus kind of rolling, similar to how we're using like a stippling motion versus a buffing when we're using the brush. We're going to settle for a couple minutes. I want to mention that this does have a light fragrance, a little bit of a light perfumey fragrance. It is nowhere near as strong as, say, Dior or Chanel. Their foundations tend to have a very strong scent. I know that Dior sometimes it gets to my eyeballs. I can feel my eyes watering or my skin starts to itch. This one doesn't do that to me, and my skin does tend to be a little bit sensitive towards added fragrances when it comes to foundation. So this one didn't bother me, but it is something to note. If you're entirely against any kind of added fragrance, you're not gonna want this foundation. The coverage is definitely medium buildable. You can definitely sheer it out, you can build it up, and the finish is on the natural side of radiant. You have some skin glowing through, but it's not like a dewy, wet looking foundation. It's just a very natural, radiant skin finish. I love that it looks like just very healthy skin. The foundation's had about 5 minutes to sink into my skin now. I do feel like this side where we use the brush has a little bit more of a natural glow than this side where we use the sponge. It's very barely noticeable. I'm not sure it's gonna pick up on camera. In person, I can just tell that this side to me seems smoother and looks like more of a natural finish, whereas this looks a little bit more flat in person. I did do a wear test with this foundation the first day that I tried it, so while I finish the rest of my face makeup, I'm gonna show you that footage from 2 hours after, 6 hours after, and 11 hours after application. So this is this foundation in natural light, my first time trying it, which is the wear test that we're doing the first time. So I've had the foundation on for 2 hours, and I feel like it's settled in. It looks very nice and natural. It's very balanced. I love the way it looks in natural light. It's just a really nice foundation. Everything looks really even. And I love seeing it in natural light. I just feel like I look very radiant. Oh, it's really nice. It hasn't oxidized on me. It's the same shade it was before. I really like it. I feel more glowy than I did at first. At first I felt like it was kind of flat, but once I put product on top of it, it looks really nice and it's wearing really beautifully. I don't notice it breaking up anywhere, not even on my nose, which is where I tend to have issues and have a little bit more texture. It's still going well. So again, only 2 hours in. It does claim to be like a 16-hour wear. I don't think I'm gonna get 16 hours out of it, but shall see. All right, so the foundation's been on for a little over 11 hours now. I'm getting ready to take it off. I've already brushed my teeth and done everything for bed except take off my makeup and do my skincare routine. I just wanted to leave it on for as long as possible just to get an idea. It looks really good still. It still looks great. It did not oxidize. Thank God it did not oxidize. The only place I really noticed it breaking up, I showed you this place earlier, right around my nose, which is my own fault. I just didn't get in there well enough, and if I don't, this happens. It's the way my nose is shaped, I think. The only place I really noticed
breakup is right here in the chin, and that's because right here my skin has been peeling from my retinol. So there's really no foundation that's gonna prevent that. Like if your skin's peeling, the foundation's gonna go with it. It's not the foundation's fault. So yeah, I'm like really, honestly, I'm just mostly excited that it didn't oxidize and that it still looks so nice and skin-like. And the last thing I want to mention is that I did not touch up with powder at all through the day. Not a single time. Like, you know, out here my skin is dry, right here it's a little bit congested. I did not put a single retouch of powder or foundation on my face. I could have easily touched this up. This, I could have powdered a little bit and probably evened it out. I just didn't want to touch it. So I mean, for this to have not been touched up in 11 hours, I mean, that's a good foundation.
All right, the rest of my face makeup is done. If you're curious about what else is on my face, I will list and link everything in the description box below. The only place that I put highlighter was on the inner corner of my eyes. I didn't put any on my cheeks or in the center of my face because I wanted you to be able to get a better idea of just how much of a glow there is to this foundation once you've done your full face. You can see natural glow is definitely a good term for it because that's what we see. There is life to this foundation, there's life to our skin, and we have a nice healthy glow. Let's talk final thoughts. This is a very nice balanced foundation. I think that this foundation works beautifully under a face of makeup like this. I don't know that I would use it for a day where I'm just going to use foundation and a little bit of blush and something on the lips, solely because on those days I tend to want something that has a little bit more of a dew to it, a little bit more of a glow. That being said, on those days like today where I am gonna do my full face of makeup and I want it to have some lasting power, some staying power, get through the whole day, 10, 11, 12, more possibly hours, this is really great. I really like glowy foundations, and if you do too, you know that they're not always the best at lasting all the way through the day. This one is really good at it. It brings to mind about the same length of wear as I would say the NARS, the Natural Radiant Longwear Foundation. This one, I think it has about as much longevity, and I also like this one better than I like the NARS because this is more lightweight. It feels very fresh, very nice on the skin. I don't feel it. Once it's there and it's settled in, I don't feel like I'm wearing a lot of makeup, and that is something that is extremely important to me. I am such a stickler about not feeling like I have a full face of foundation on. I want it to just be breathable. I want my skin to be able to breathe and to just feel fresh. And this foundation does feel very fresh. And I loved that even 11 hours into the wear test, it still looked fresh. While I do have texture across my nose, I don't produce much oil. So if you do have oily skin, it's very likely that you're not going to get the same wear time out of this foundation as I did. I do know that on Sephora's site, this foundation is not deemed as being for oily skin. You can take that advice or leave it, but I would say that if you produce a good bit of oil, this probably will not have that longevity for you. All in all, I think this foundation is a great fit and is really worth the money if, number one, you're like me and you struggle with some texture and enlarged pores, but also have dryness in some other places. This is a great balanced foundation that looks good on the dry parts of my skin, as well as on the congested parts where I have those, larger pores and I have that uneven skin texture. Number two, if you're good with the $60 price tag, again, I really think it's worth the money, but that's only a decision that you can make for yourself. And number three is the big one here, and it's what I think sets this foundation apart from other foundations in my collection, and that is if you want this natural, nice glow, but you also need longevity, I think you'll probably appreciate this foundation. Of all the foundations in my collection, this is the one that has the most glow mixed with the most longevity. It's certainly not the glowiest, and it's certainly not the one that lasts the very longest, but it has the best balance of the two. So for me, this is like right up my alley, especially when it comes to summertime and getting back into the world where we're gonna be around people for longer periods of time. this is probably going to be something I reach for throughout the summer. If you're interested in more makeup reviews, be sure to hit the subscribe button and also check out my reviews playlist. I hope to see you in my next video, and until then, you take care of yourself. Bye.